Wa kia ora koto, ko Stephen toku ingoa, na o tatahi ao. It's really great to welcome you all here and be able to hear a little bit about what's going on in the sector, what are people seeing, and we've got some really good speakers who are going to be sharing with us some of the things that they're observing. The reason that these calls were set up is that very often we end up operating in a silo within our own organizations or with certain areas that we may know a lot about. So typically, in my experience as a lawyer, I often talk with other lawyers, and sports charities might not talk with mental health charities. And yet there's lots of synergy, there's lots of things that we can learn from each other. So the aim of these calls is to provide that opportunity, to provide a platform using wonderful Zoom as a way to connect us across the country because we're representing organizations all over and people doing some really good, impactful, purposeful stuff. So this is being recorded because some people said they'd love to join, but they're not able to. And we will be, I'll send out an email afterwards. Just if any of you have updates or things that you'd like to share, feel free to send it to me and I'll make sure to include that in the emails. Which now go to a large number of people. So the aim, what we're going to do, the way it's going to run is I'm going to hand over to some special guests who are going to be sharing with us a little bit of their perspective, what they're seeing. And then we're going to be going into breakout rooms for those of you who are able to stay. And it'll be a chance for you to get to know maybe 4, maybe 5 other people and share about what it is that you're seeing. And then we'll report back what were the key themes that came from those breakout groups. And that way we can kind of learn from each other, get a sense of what's going on within this sector. I also just wanted, before we get into the first speaker, I wanted to introduce Michael, who's here with me. Michael's just joined the team that I've been developing, really focused on purpose and impact. So he's a recent graduate from Canterbury University and is doing some great work here already, only 2 months in, helping with charities, not-for-profits, as well as for-profit, purpose-driven businesses. So this is Michael, welcome. So what we'd like to do is hand over, and Louise, I'd love to hear a little bit from you in terms of Akina Foundation. And just in a brief way, what's going on? How has the Impact Initiative been going? What are the next steps? We'd love to hear an update on social enterprise and impact-driven organizations. So over to you.
Great, tēnā koe, Stephen. And yeah, nice to see everyone. We've had quite the last quarter. And on the 31st of March, our government partnership came to an end, which was 3 years. It was probably about 4 years worth of work, really. It took us about a year to get it. But yeah, 3 years of work with, in partnership with the Department of Internal Affairs and about 13 other ministries to establish the conditions for a thriving social enterprise sector in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we've done a lot of testing, we've done a lot of delivery, a lot of insights and research, and it's led us to the point of where we are now, which is delivering the recommendations to government. So government-focused recommendations on what they need to do next in order to be able to continue to support impact-driven organisations and social enterprises, or whatever term people want to call themselves, community enterprises, Māori and Pacifica enterprises, impact enterprises, social enterprises, so that we continue to have a focus on building impact into our economy. So over the next 2 weeks, we will be releasing publicly those recommendations. There is a beautiful report at the top of them, and then underneath that are 15 white papers which detail out the evidence for the recommendation and why should that recommendation be a priority for government. These recommendations cover 5 areas. One is around social procurement. As you've probably heard me talk a lot before, social procurement is a significant lever for businesses to deliver impact through supply chains, and we really see the opportunity for government to strengthen their approach to social procurement through the $42 billion that they spend in the economy every year. So that is a significant set of recommendations, and we will be working directly with MB and other parts of government to support the implementation of those recommendations. The next area is access to investment. So recommending government enable more access to capability building when it comes to getting ready for investment, to be able to bring access to more co-investment for impact-driven investment, as well as supporting the Centre for Sustainable Finance, which has been set up under the Aotearoa Circle's focus on sustainable finance forum. So that's a significant area for us, given not only the amount of capital that's required to address climate change, but significant, as Stephen well knows, significant capital required for things like social housing and mental health, etc. The next area is around tools, so continue to work on the creation of tools in line with what business.gov.nz already does, delivering tools for individuals and organisations in the startup phase. How do we ensure that impact is also part of that? So continuing that focus. What we also have is the next area, which is around impact and government taking an impact-focused approach. So as many of you will know, government aren't very good at understanding the impact of their activities, and so how might taking an impact-focused approach through measurement, through understanding the levers that they have, creating a consistent language of impact at an activity level, not just at a high-level population framework. Those are all opportunities that we see government to have. And the final area is around continuing to enable a connection with the sector itself. So where does social enterprise sit within government? As we have been, we've been within the CVS, so the community and voluntary sector portfolio, is that where government believes it should be. Our view quite firmly is that it needs to be in economic development. So what change needs to happen within portfolios and ministries in that regard. Also continuing to support a sector leadership group. A lot of the questions that I've had is what's going to be the role of Akina at the end of this. We are not a peak body. We are not a membership organisation. So what we've recognised even before this program started is we are not the voice of all in the social enterprise sector. And so over the last 3 years, we've developed a very, very strong, deep partnership right across the sector. And formed a group called the Sector Working Group. We now want to continue to support that in a leadership role and have that be the voice of the sector, and Akina to just be part of that. So that would also incorporate the Community Enterprise Network Trust, which sits over the Zero Waste Network and other significantly important community enterprises. Would have representation of Māori and Pacifica business, youth, social enterprise, of course, and it's really important for us to ensure that government sees social enterprise in the widest spectrum possible and has representation right across that spectrum in a leadership group. So that's a significant opportunity for us to get government to support that, and we'll be working over the next 4 months, led by Matthew Luxon from the Zero Waste Network, in developing up that opportunity with government. So that's a very high level view of what there is. As you can imagine, a massive amount of work sits underneath these recommendations. We're pretty excited to launch them publicly. We have had very, very good engagement with not only our Minister of CVS, but right across different portfolios. And so we have commitment that there will be a cabinet paper taken through to government by June to support the outcomes and government's acceptance in whatever degree of the recommendations that we have. So we will continue to have engagement with them. We will continue to work directly with them, but the aim is that it's now up to government. They've been told what they need to do, so we're very keen to help support them to do that. So look out, you'll see. I'll make sure that Stephen gets the recommendations set and share them with this group straight away, and we're very, very keen, as we always are, to have any conversation with you, your organisation or your networks about how these recommendations can support the important mahi that you all do as well. So, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, and ngā mihi nui, Stephen, for allowing me the chance to speak.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I can say personally, I've seen the work that Akina is doing across the country, not just in one place. It's amazing how much that name comes up in the area that I'm in. So there's a huge number of resources on the website that they've got. And in the chat, I put that. I'm aware that some of you may have come from more the philanthropic side or the charitable side. But I think some of the words, and we've talked about this, Louise, some of the words maybe we'll end up using more in the future will be impact, and it will be purpose. And I think there are spectrums, and we can learn from each other, whether we're on more of the for-profit side or the not-for-profit side. And one of the fascinating things is that many not-for-profits are looking, how do we stay sustainable? How do we continue operating, and actually exploring, setting up a subsidiary that does a certain thing for impact and purpose. So thank you so much. Keep up the awesome mahi there at Akina Foundation. And what we're going to do now is turn to Sue, who's the CEO at Philanthropy New Zealand. So Sue, we'd love to hear from you. I know there's a conference coming up. We'd love to know what you're going to be covering there. Is it open to everybody? Yeah, just give us an update from things that you're seeing in the sector as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks Stephen, and awesome work, Louise, and can't wait to see the recommendations and what happens to take it all next level. Kia ora koutou everybody. So yep, I'm Sue from Philanthropy New Zealand. So we're a peak body for philanthropic funders and grant makers throughout New Zealand. And yes, we are really busy at the moment preparing for our biennial philanthropy summit. And I thought, I would talk about the summit, and not really in the sense of this is the event, but I do feel like if you look at the program for the Philanthropy Summit, it really gives you a feel for where philanthropic funders and grant makers are at the moment in terms of the topics that they're grappling with, some of the opportunities, some of the trends, and some of the challenges. It's we're running it sadly online this year, but we are having regional viewing parties. And basically the bulk of the summit is a really safe space for funders to have very open conversations about how they're going, learn from each other, the successes, but also some of the barriers that they've got and some of the changes they need to make. Coming into this role, one thing I've just been amazed at is the desire for funders to keep improving things for fund seekers for New Zealand, to kind of keep evolving their practices and processes, because very much they are responding to the changing world. So as to your question, Stephen, in terms of the summit and who it's open to and who it's not, there's a full program which is really just for funders because it has a lot of these small conversations. We have a lot of community voices kind of presenting in them. You can see that in the program right throughout. It's often community voices telling funders what their reality is, or what they need in terms of achieving their outcomes. But then this year we also have a keynote package which is open to anybody really. So that's 6 keynote speakers. So basically the theme of the summit is amplifying community aspirations, because that's basically what funders are there to do, to listen to what the community want and need, and then to think about how they can support those aspirations. And on day one, so it's 3 kind of short days. Day one is about how funders can contribute beyond money, and that just dovetails nicely into what Louise was talking about. It is no longer good enough for a funder to think, I invest my money over here and I give it out over here. It's all become a bit more integrated. So that day we'll look at things like social procurement, impact investment, advocacy, and the role that funders have got in terms of working with other sectors to get system change, rather than just keep funding the problems we see as a result of systemic problems. The importance of relationships, connecting, convening, and other ways just of helping and being part of the community. Day 2 has got a real focus on how funders support sustainable and inclusive communities, and there's kind of 2 key parts to this. The first is how can the sector better fund Maori aspirations? We've got two keynote speakers, Jamie Tuta and Jennifer Ward-Leyland, a Maori and a non-Maori voice, who are talking about, how do we achieve balanced tauriti now in this modern day, looking back at our bicultural foundations. So that's a real focus for the sector, is how to do better in that space. And then the second half of the day is around hearing from the voices of communities that typically philanthropy underserves. So that's where we don't have equity in our communities. And when I'm talking about funders, I'm doing a real broad brush. And obviously, as you all know, and I can see Kate Frickberg is on the call. And so I'm just she's just written a beautiful blog, which I shared on LinkedIn. And it talked about, if you see one funder, you've seen one funder, and they're all very different. So while I'm talking about funders like our one group, there are some funders there that are just so progressive and amazing. And then there's funders who are, more traditional in terms of the way they give out their money. So it's a really diverse kind of sector. So we've got, LG, BTQIA, we've got refugees, Pacifica, people with disabilities, all those different voices coming in to talk to funders about their advice to funders about how they can kind of achieve equity. So that's going to be an amazing day. And then on day 3, it's more around discussing the whole gamut of topics that just impact all funders, or what are the system supports needed for better giving. So that's things like climate change, it's things like good data and using data. It's about how to prepare for major events, how to respond to them, what's the role of the sector and the individual funder, and how to help the community recover. And obviously we've had Christchurch earthquakes, and we've had the terrorist shootings, and then we've had COVID. And philanthropic funders kind of, with something like COVID, go, okay, what's our role? And they watch government, and everything shifts, and where is their place in that? So the keynotes, we've got an initial keynote, which is a group of funders who are going to throw out a really strategic challenge to attendees at the summit in terms of what they need to do in all aspects of their operations to be part of the Aotearoa we want to see. And then we've actually got 2 members of the Rockefeller family talking about their work to get financial institutions to transition out of financing fossil fuels. As you can see, there's quite a bit of diversity. I mean, philanthropy covers the broad spectrum of everything, so the summit is quite diverse. I've talked about the conversation between Jamie Tuta and Jennifer Ward-Leyland. We've got another session, which I can't really say much about, but it's going to look at how inequality is occurring globally right now on a really key topic, and the forces that naturally bring about inequity, plus the fight to prevent that inequity and push more for equity. And then we're also shaping up another keynote around the role of philanthropy in funding movements like Black Lives Matter and Reclaim the Night. We don't quite see in our country some of those movements as strongly, but they're huge globally, and our funders are getting more and more involved in terms of advocacy. And then we finish off with young voices kind of going, let's paint a picture of the country we want to be part of, and funders, here's what you can do to kind of get us there. Just to finish off, because I know Stephen wanted me to keep it short, just because of this audience, I'd like to mention another key project that we're currently undertaking is we're seeking seed funding for what we can call a philanthropic marketplace. So it's a service that's going to enable easier connection between funders and fund seekers. We've worked with groups of fund seekers in terms of exploring the concept, and it's got a number of parts to it, but from a fund seeker perspective, which involves most people on the call, one of the key benefits is the ability to load a funding request or multiple funding requests and get in front of a group of funders who have specifically said they're interested in funding that type of service, or that type of cause, or that community, or that region. And so funders will get alerted to new requests, and also at any point in time they can search on any particular type of request. So we hope that will ease the burden for fund seekers in terms of which funder do I go to, and then reading through all the criteria and you know, it will help to shortcut some of that. So if anyone is interested in staying updated on that project, they can just email me. I'll put my email in the chat and I'll just keep you on the list and keep you updated. Thank you very much. Back to you, Stephen.
Great, thank you so much. That was great. You packed a lot in there, and it sounds like it's going to be a great conference. So if people are interested, go to the website. I put it in the chat, the link to your website. And also, while you're there, I would encourage you, I don't know about all of you, but I sign up for newsletters from different organizations to stay up to speed. So I know Philanthropy New Zealand, you have a regular newsletter which gives some real highlights of things that are happening. And so it's a really good way to stay up with the sector. So cool, well, keep up the great work, Sue. It's awesome to hear from you. And I think some of the people joining the call maybe aren't as familiar with Philanthropy New Zealand. So this is a chance for them to have heard from you. Go visit the website, have a look. And the blog that you mentioned from Kate, who's on the call, so hi Kate, is in the chat as well. I dropped it in there, so make sure you have a look at that. So we're gonna jump again to a different voice, which is Francesca from Charities Services. So we're really interested to hear from you. You know, there's getting, I think last time I looked, it was close to 28,000 charities. So yeah, what's happening in your world there, and keen to understand how things are going at Charity Services.
Thanks, Stephen. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Francesca tuku ingoa. I'm a regional advisor for Charity Services. So first up, our GM, Natasha Waite, is back from parental leave, and her leave, we reshuffled quite a few of our management positions. So now everyone is back to their substantive roles. So we're happy to have her back. You might have seen that the modernisation of the Charities Act, which has been stalled for a while, is back and underway. And there is an update on our policy group website, DIA's policy group website, and I'll send the link to Stephen and he can send that out to everybody. Just to be really clear, Charity Services isn't part of the review, so our policy team at DIA are doing that. And I'll also send the email address if you want to contact them. So they're looking at a few key things. So the obligations of charities, including annual reporting for the very small charities. So the register is full of quite a lot of small charities, and they're looking at how the reporting obligations are for those people. They're also looking at the regulator's powers, so Charity Services powers, and our decision making, accountability to the sector, and the accessibility of appeals for charities under the current structure. And the third thing they're looking at is charitable business and the accumulation of funds. So watch this space, because it's been a while, it's been paused for a while. I have a lot of kind of legal things to talk to you about. Sorry, it's not quite as exciting as Louise and Sue. The Incorporated Societies Act is also currently open for submissions. It's going to be quite a big change for societies, and they're looking to build in some governance provisions to the new Act. The old Act is very old, it's from 1908, so it'll be quite exciting to have it modernised for people. Submissions close on the 28th of May, and there is a committee that's due back to report back by the 6th of October. So get submissions in if you're interested. The Trust Act also changed this year, which has quite a lot of impact on charities too. We will be participating in a webinar next month, and you can probably keep up to date if you subscribe to our newsletter or like us on Facebook, and we'll be putting information about the webinar there. But we also wrote a blog on it, so I'm talking about the default duties, the mandatory duties for trusts now, so you might want to check out our blog. We've had quite a lot of feedback, and we're really interested to see if it hits the mark for you. So if you like it, let us know. If you think it can be improved, let us know. In-person engagement. So a while ago, in 2019, we committed to improving our external engagement. COVID kind of struck last year, so our engagement plan went out the window, but we're back. And we're getting around the Wellington region, we've been to Nelson, and we're planning on going to Christchurch for like an open day so charities can come and talk to our staff. That's scheduled for the 26th of May. And we'll be getting around the country a little bit more, so meeting people all around the place. Another one of our priorities this year is changing our IT system. That's going to improve security, and there'll be a bit of change to charities and what things look like, but we'll also communicate that via email close to the date when the changes are happening. Some of you may know and some of you may not. We have a charities sector group that we meet with 2 or 3 times a year, and there's a few people on this call that are involved in that. It's a way to hear what the sector is seeing and feeling, and for us to test some of our things. We test our forms with them, but also to have a better relationship. So our sector group will be meeting in May this year. We have now put up a page on our website, so reporting back to everybody, so you can check out what's happened in meetings that have passed, and we will upload the notes from the next meeting there. And we've also got a research page. It's brand new on our website too, so take a look at that and you can look into some of the areas that there's some research. And if you want to contribute to that, let us know. But as always, we really want to hear from you about what we're doing well, about what we can improve, about where you're seeing charities struggling, what we can do to help. That's kind of our main goal. So thank you, Stephen.
That's great, thank you. You also fit a lot in there, and so many legal things. It was fascinating from my perspective. No, no, it's really good. There's actually a huge amount happening, isn't there? And like the incorporated societies, that's been like for years now. It's coming, and now finally it's arriving. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but thank you for the update. It's I think sometimes it's easy to look at a government department or a group and think, well, what are they actually doing? But that's quite a long list of different initiatives and projects. So great to hear. Thank you for that. So we've now heard from 3 representatives of different organizations, but one of the things that, I don't know about you, but I love actually hearing from people doing the mahi, the work on the ground, starting something new, actually getting involved in the community. So we need these organizations that are above everything and you know, being involved in different ways. But I thought it would be fun on this call to actually hear from some individuals who've just started charities and are active in the not-for-profit sector, just to give us a different context and perspective. Because yeah, I think sometimes we get too high level. I know I do. So I've asked 2 people to speak to us, and they're just going to give us a brief overview of something that is very close to their hearts. So Anna, do you mind just sharing with us about what you're up to? And then we'll hear from you, Jezza. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with this group today. I really appreciate it. So, hi everyone, I'm Anna, and I'm here to talk to you today about a newly established charity called Our Little Village. So I thought I'd just start with a little bit of background and how it all began, and then also talk about what we're currently doing, and then what's coming up next. So, and the background is I've got a 18-month-old girl. Her name is Goldie. She's a handful, but she's amazing. And I was super lucky when I had her. I have an amazing family. I've got an amazing supportive husband. We were lucky enough to have enough disposable income for all the things she needed. She was healthy, but with all of that, I really, really, really struggled in those first 3 months of her, well, yeah, probably beyond 3 months, but definitely in those first 3 months when she was first born. So I was really lucky. I had a doctor who had a clinic running out of the apartment building that I was living with, and he would just say, come anytime you need. So I'd drop in and heavily anxious, worried something was wrong with Goldie, and he would sort of see straight away that actually she was fine, and that in fact there was probably something that wasn't quite right with how I was. So he would do all this tests on her just to keep me calm, and then talk to me about how I was going. And he'd often say to me, and it's something that kind of stuck, and it relates to the name of the charity today, is you know, it takes a village to raise a baby. That's where the saying comes from. He said, you're in an apartment building in the middle of the city, you're all by yourself all day long. No wonder you're struggling. And so sort of after 10 weeks, I was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and I kind of always reflected back on it and just thought how lucky was I had the most amazing, like I said, support system, family, funds, and I just couldn't even imagine how hard it would be for people who didn't have that or didn't have a healthy child in that really challenging time. And so I came up with a concept, and I then went out to sort of research to see if it was actually a need. So thinking about, you know, those really essential items that are required for babies in those first month to 6 weeks of their lives. So I got in touch with Plunkett, Auckland ADHB, the midwife community, as well as some family centres out here in Auckland, just to bounce my thinking and see if there was actually a need for this. And they said absolutely, especially with COVID, they're finding that there's more and more families who are in situations where they just can't simply afford those basic essential items. And I think one of the other interesting things, and it kind of was a reflection on myself, was what is to be considered essential. So I was, like I said, lucky enough to have the things that I needed for her. And so what I considered to be essential was quite different from what's essential to those people that may really need it. So that was a bit of a wake-up call as well. And then looked into, you know, what are other charities that are doing similar things, and if there is something out there already. So I've been in touch with a couple of other charitable organisations that are doing care packages for families, and we've decided that that there's an absolute need for us to kind of continue working, but we're going to be banding together. So we're in the process of setting up a quarterly connect where we've got 2 of us on board, and we're going to try and span that out a little bit further, just to talk through experiences, making sure that we're working together where we can, and any learnings that we all have. So hopefully we can get some sort of representative that can provide updates to this group over the time. And then from there, the idea was in my head. I'd done the sort of research, chatted with other places, and I then spoke with who is my little sister, who is actually also on this call. Her name's Olivia, and she is a marketing guru. So I'm a background in project management, I can only communicate in bullet points, and so I would talk to her about what I was thinking, and she was able to kind of put that into a vision and a brand behind it. And then I reached out to Stephen, and himself and one of his colleagues, Judith, have been amazing in supporting us getting through all the legal things that we need to do as part of setting up an organisation. So we've now set up as a registered charity. We've got a partnership with the Ronald McDonald House up here in Auckland. And the goal is to start small. Our first goal was by the end of May 21 to have delivered 20 boxes out, and we're halfway there, which is amazing. The next thing we're looking at is just making sure that we're gathering feedback and just hearing what else is out there that might be needed. I know there's a big gap in care for what the mother needs as well, which is super close to my heart. So thinking about what things we could include to help them out. We currently have maternity pads and nursing pads, but is there anything else that they really need? And then we will also continue to stay connected with those other charities who are doing similar work, and looking at other distribution channels. And then we'd also love in the future to kind of, I've found as being a mum and all the forums and things like that are set up, it's great to connect, but it also can be quite daunting, and not a lot of people sort of speak the truth about how they're going. Everything's fine and Instagram looks beautiful. So just trying to create a sort of blog social environment where people have psychological safety to be able to speak how they're feeling and get support from others. So yeah, that's a little bit about our little village. We have just had our website go live last night, actually. So Stephen's popped that in the channel. Thank you. But if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to reach out. And I just love to connect with anyone if they've ideas on distribution and any learnings. Welcome for any kind of feedback and support. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Thank you. It's just good to hear from somebody who's started something that's so close to their own experience. And it's been awesome to be able to support you in a little way with that. And I guess I'd encourage people on the call, reach out to Anna. You've heard the story. There might be things, synergies that you can already see where there's initiatives that you know of that might gel. And Francesca, I know you profile charities from time to time, so maybe here's an example of one that could be profiled. So thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, it's just good to hear from the ground somebody who started something new like that. And I'd like to turn now to Jezza, and we'd love to hear a little bit about your story as well, because I asked the two of you because you're very, very different focuses, but I think these are examples of new things that are starting. And that's why I love what I do, actually, because it's so diverse, helping people begin something that's completely different to the last person. So Jezza, what people probably don't know about you is that you are New Zealand's first tetraplegic solo paragliding pilot. So I'll leave it at that for you now to tell us a little bit about your initiative.
So thank you, Stephen, for giving me the opportunity to share the story and what I believe is one of the things that New Zealand is lacking seriously, and we need to really get amongst it. So firstly, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. So my name's Jezza Williams. I spent most of my life as an adventure guide all over the world. And then what happened was I had a canyoning accident in Switzerland a decade ago, and I broke my C5 vertebrae right up the top here. So now I'm a tetraplegic, but don't you worry about that because you understand what I'm doing right now. That's not what the focus is about. So as soon as I injured myself, I was lucky enough to be in Switzerland, and I had very good insurance, and I got looked after incredibly well. I've always had a go-getter attitude. You know, I'm not one person to sit back. I'm the person to get amongst it. And so whilst I was in rehab, I came up with the initiative of Makingtrax. Makingtrax was for myself personally to stay within the industry. So I looked into the industry in New Zealand and worldwide to understand what adventure activities and activities would be available for people in my situation. And I was quite blown away, actually. At that point in time, there wasn't that much happening. So I took the initiative straight away. And in 2011, I opened Makingtrax, the company. Now, because I opened it as a company base at the start was because I'm Jezza and I like to do things my way. I didn't know anybody. I had to come back to New Zealand and start everything afresh. I don't pay myself. I've never paid myself a cent. I've paid for everything that Makingtrax does with transport, with accommodation, with all these things. And what we've in the past 10 years, we've just changed the industry. Please look us up, check out what we're doing, look me up on LinkedIn, follow the story because it's quite powerful. So what I do now is I'm incredibly efficient with making inclusive tourism happen. Now, inclusive tourism is a New Zealand initiative. It is a Makingtrax initiative. We've brought that into the tourism industry to open up the industry. So it's only education to the industry and to the operators and to like Outward Bound and to like universities and to like the whole big picture. Then after that, it is also with the companies, educating the companies to know what's possible. As Stephen said before, I am a solo paraglider. Don't know how they gave me a license, but they did. I go whitewater rafting. I make harnesses to make things possible. I go kayaking. I've done trips from London to Mongolia and back again on rallies. I just go and do stuff, you know. I'm a doer. I'm not a talker. So, but over the time, it's because I'm me. I've made everything quite awesome, and I'm quite good at getting things done. And then we took initiative recently, a couple of years back, to make a seal of approval. So we've made a directory. So all of the information that a client needs, or any Kiwi or anybody needs with a disability to access an adventure, just needs information. So it's education, it's information, then it's cooperation between company and client. So I can go in and be the person in between to open up all of these activities, which are on the website, on the directory. And then it is adaptions. So I've been making adaptions for years, basically, so my body can do the activities. If my body can do the activities, anybody can do the activities. And then after that, it's promotion. So it's promoting the whole thing through film, through videography, through social media, through as much as we can. So that was the big picture. And it's been a wild journey, and we've been going real hard. It's incredible. And then boom, shankalanka, here comes COVID, and everything sort of goes quiet. And I'm like, why is it going quiet? And over the past, I've worked with people like Kelly with Smile Dog, getting kids out there. I've done trips for Make-A-Wish Foundation from America that come all the way to New Zealand because we're the only company in the world that can provide this service. But Kiwis, I expected when the COVID came in that Kiwis would get amongst it. And yes, we've ran a trips for New Zealanders, but not so much. So I was in lockdown as a tetraplegic in my beautiful garden. And I was thinking, well, my life's pretty easy, considering the situation. But what about other people? So I started doing a little bit of ringing around and looking at people in my situation. There's been some really crazy articles in the paper. You may have heard of the difference between, say, the Ministry of Health and ACC, for example, or maybe the 70% of unemployment rate within the disability sector. I don't know if you're aware of all this sort of stuff. And the victimization of people. And it's not people's fault. It's education. It's what's been happening in the past. Apparently, people with disabilities are bound to wheelchairs, thus suffering from their disability. You know, their life is difficult and hard. Why? Because it sells stories. It's amazing. It's awesome. Don't you worry. I understand how the media works. I work a lot with the media myself. So I'm changing the story. So Makingtrax is about total integration and total inclusion. And so what that means is I don't see myself different to anybody else, and neither should anybody else. So with Makingtrax, we don't look at accessible tourism. We don't look at somebody's disability. We look at the possibilities. And this is what's the big, I had a meeting with all the guys at Christchurch NZ the other day. I go in and I assist them to open up their products so people with disabilities can come and enjoy it. Not as somebody with a disability, but as a human. The only thing that all humans have in common is their diversity. And I've learned this. Yes, I've got quite a lot of confidence and that's all good. But a lot of people in my situation, because they were born with a disability, because things happen over time, you know, they can't find jobs. Everything's quite difficult. So I'm flip-siding it. So what we're doing now is I'm carrying on with the Makingtrax movement. What that means is we provide a directory for the whole, so anybody can go and do an activity. From anything from Outward Bound right through to Skydive, Franz Joseph, for example. We provide all the information that's there for the people that want to come and do an activity. So they can just drive in and do an activity. They don't need to contact me, the company can contact me, etc., etc. So that's the first part. It works on a basis where they can even donate experiences. They can provide donations for us. But what are we going to do with all these experiences and donations? So what? Makingtrax. And next part is to flip side the story. It's called adventure therapy, and it is actually a proven fact. And trust me, if anybody can tell you about adventure therapy, then it is me, yes? So it's empowering a generation. So what we're doing, imagine if Fred went into an inclusive and an integrated event. So he went multi-day rafting with Barney, with Martin, with Wilma. Then actually Bernie, Martin, Wilma would meet Fred and they would be empowered to treat him as a human being. They would even see that he's actually got more abilities than they have, because people in challenging environments, they shine. So what that does, it integrates people. People understand each other, and it breaks down this victimization that's been happening and still happens in New Zealand. And trust me, it does. Now, there's many charities in New Zealand, and don't get me wrong, they're awesome and amazing, and they do some amazing work. But we, as Makingtrax, do something completely different, because we're about total integration and inclusion. We put our people, which are anybody and everybody that wants to go and do an activity, but sometimes people might want to, can't afford it, you know, and they can apply to us. This is where we want to go in the future. They apply to us and we provide them with an opportunity. Maybe it's to go on a multi-day rafting trip. Maybe it's to go for a skydive, or maybe it's to go for a cool little Queenstown trip, or maybe it's to go do Outward Bound. As I work with Outward Bound, it won't be an adaptive course. It will be a course. The people that are there on that course will learn so much more, because they'll learn that their abilities are exactly the same as Fred's abilities. And they'll work together to problem solve. Fred will be enhanced. He'll understand his potential. The people around him will be enhanced. They will understand their potential. And this will start breaking down barriers between the disability sector, which should not really be there, not in this day and age, and the society. Through that, the strength of this momentum will start to open up people's opportunities. Growth through adventure-based learning. The last part of it that we're going to do is we're going to hopefully introduce society to reality. So what that means is that we're going to be running events, roundtable events. We'd love you all to come and listen. And we're going to bring in people that have got diverse backgrounds, diverse understandings, even extremes, you know, extreme kayakers, for example, expeditionists, people that have gone through crazy times. People like Anna can come and share their story. And what this does is it breaks down. Everybody loves a story. Everybody loves a human story. But what we need is we need empowering stories, not feel sorry stories. So Makingtrax is about total integration and total inclusion. And it's something that the story needs to change. And that is our job. And that's our job that we're doing for years. So we've just started with the help of Stephen. You're awesome. Thank you very much. And we are actually at the moment trying to find seed funding. I've never really done this sort of, I've worked a lot with other charities, but myself personally, I've never really done that much charity work. I really don't like reaching out for money. I'm not that kind of character. I do everything myself. But I'm understanding that the Makingtrax movement is not Jezza's movement anymore. The Makingtrax movement is New Zealand's movement. And I need to have the support of the industry, which I already have. I need to have the support from as many people as we can find. We're trying to find sponsors. We're trying to find maybe some seed funders, this sort of thing at the moment. And we just actually got, the charity just came about Thursday before Easter. And we're still opening our bank account as we speak. I'm going to go and fill in the last forms this afternoon. And boom, there we go. That's the story of Makingtrax. I hope I could put enough in there. I always speak very fast so I can, you know, gather all thatness and put it into there. And I'd really like you guys to reach out if you like. Check out what we do. Look me up on LinkedIn, look me up on Facebook, Instagram, and check out our website. Everything's on the website, but that's the business website. At the moment, we're trying to find funding so we can open up our new story. And yeah, I'm glad that I got this chance to share with you all. Thanks.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jezza. I really appreciate it. And I think people, even if they got 10% of your enthusiasm there, they'll go away buzzing from what you're talking about. So thank you. And people are messaging me privately in the little thing saying, this is amazing, this is great. So really good to hear more of your story. And in your case, it was a fascinating process to transition from a for-profit type of entity over towards a charitable entity, realizing that the funding was probably going to be coming from that source. So it's been a really, really interesting process to work through with you. And I put the website link in the chat, so do have a look. But thank you, Anna and Jezza. Really appreciate your input, because you just, I don't know about anybody else, but my afternoon is going to feel better knowing that there's causes like this that are starting and that they're getting underway. So thank you for grounding us in reality, and but also giving us hope for these very different causes, but that there's really amazing things happening there. So really appreciate it. So I'm just conscious of time, and what we normally do is split into breakout rooms. So if people, I know some of you will need to drop off, and that's fine, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway, because I think it's a good chance for people to get, you know, connection, be able to share maybe what you appreciated about what people were talking about. So we're going to do that. before we do that, I'm going to send an email which summarizes some of the call today, and I'm going to put links to anything I know is coming up. For example, we have the Privacy Commissioner coming into our office to share with us about privacy and charities. So that's in the middle of May. And I know there's other events that are happening, so I'll put lots of links within this email that goes out. So if you know of something else, then feel free to drop me an email. I think you all are in touch with me. If you're here, somehow you got a link, so you probably have my email. So that's that thing. And then the other thing is I want to say I've been doing this podcast called Seeds. And so it's just hit 250 episodes and hit about 107,000 listens to all the episodes. So that's an initiative that really relies on other people, namely people like you, to share about it, to help get word about Seeds out. And what I'm doing there is trying to interview people about their stories, a little bit like what Anna and Jezza have shared. So if you're interested in that, I've just put the link to that in the chat. Have a look, have a check out. There's heaps of content, lots on various topics that will be of interest to you. So what I'm going to do now is send you to rooms. If any of you need to drop off, it's no problem. But some of you may want to stay. This is just going to be a short little chance to say hello to somebody else that you've never met. There'll probably be maybe 4 people in the rooms. But for those of you dropping off, it's been great to have you on the call. And I will just send you to rooms now. All right. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. I think you're back. I'm conscious of the time, so I know many people have other things that they've moved on to. But I would be curious if any of you are able to share some of the themes maybe that came through from your discussion, or something that struck you from the little mini conversations you've just had. If we could go group by group, it'd be wonderful to hear something of what you talked about. Does anybody want to kick off?
I'm happy to kick off, Steve.
Great.
We just basically had time to introduce ourselves and what we were doing. So in our chat, we had Anna from our little village, and we've heard from her today, and she's got a pretty good message there, and she's trying to do some fantastic stuff. So I think that's, yeah, I'm a supporter of what she's trying to do. We had Brian from Child Rescue New Zealand, looking to deal with child sex trafficking, and then he disappeared off that call. We had Sho from the International Centre for Community Development, told us a little bit about what he's doing, and I'm representing the super home movement, so trying to improve the health and well-being of Kiwis in their homes. Anna and I had quite a good chat about the work that she's just done in renovating her house and how it's made a lot of difference as part of what she's doing. So yeah, it was good. It was good to meet some other people. I think that was so. I thank you for inviting me to join this chat, because I think it was very, very useful. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, the thing is, all 40 whatever something who were on before, like, we could have conversations with every single one of you. I know is purpose driven, impact driven, so there would be amazing conversations, but we do what we can with the format. So thank you for sharing that. Does another group want to share anything that maybe any themes that came through?
Our group, we had Sue Barker, which was fantastic, lawyer, doing some great work around developing the Ideal Charities Act, Deborah from World Endometriosis Society, and Megan from Exalt, and Olivia also from Village with a Child, you know, the one that Anna set up. We actually had an interesting discussion about the number of charities that are emerging, and sort of a range of views. One concerned about that in terms of people competing for resources, but also, as Sue pointed out, that a narrative around that there are too many charities, and that it's important to have diversity. So I think if we'd gotten another 5-10 minutes, I know we would have all come to an agreement on it, because I think that they're all valid points, but yeah, always a good discussion point. So please share everyone else that was in the group if you want to add.
If I could share, Megan from Exalt, thank you, Liz. What I found really interesting was I think that when an organisation starts, I love what Social Link focus on in terms of really thinking about who else is out there, not necessarily, or both from is there someone else doing this already point of view, but also from who else is doing something similar that we might walk alongside. And I think the process of doing that is really awesome. Because it sets up those networks right from the start, and possibly when people set up an organisation, it sets them up from the start looking to collaborate or looking for organisations that are doing similar stuff. So I love that, and I do hear a lot that you know, there's talk around too many organisations, and I totally value the diversity and the number of organisations, and even the subtly different focus. And the difference that can make for the people that they support. But I think the first step is always to, you know, who else is out there? Not necessarily from are we competing, but also from, you know, who else can we join with and walk alongside and do even better than we're doing. That's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good good point. And I thought, Anna, you expressed that well as well, you know, that you looked around to see who was out there. And same for Jezza, actually. He looked around, is anybody doing this? No. Certainly it's one of the things that one of the first questions I ask a new potential person who wants to set up a charity is, have you researched, is there someone you could come in and support their kaupapa rather than duplication? Because none of us want to see that. So no, that's great points. Any other groups want to share what they talked about?
I'll jump in, Stephen. Yeah, Kia ora, folks. My name is Peter. So I was just talking with, let me see here, with Chris from the Hill Family Trust, and Terry, who's with Young Enterprise NZ. And I, for my part, I work on a marine research trust down here called the Blue Cradle Foundation, that Stephen is guilty in assisting, along with probably a lot of us. So essentially, one of the things that's sort of the obvious is that, as Chris put it, right now fundraising is trying to get blood from a stone. It's a really difficult ecosystem out there between COVID and all of the sort of various stacking crises in the world. And one thing that's really a perennial challenge is getting that multi-year operational funding for charities to essentially build the base of support they need for a term of, say, 3 years, to get up and running and have some security in being able to run the ship as they build up those strategic partnerships and other income streams that they need to carry them forward in the long haul.
Yeah, true. Yep. How do we help organizations to be sustainable and finding sources of funding or developing business or doing whatever it is, right? So yeah, thank you. That's really awesome. How about, there must be another group, right? Or maybe 2 more. Who hasn't had a chance to share?
Hi, Stephen, this is Guillaume. So I was in a group with Lisa Mead, Mara English, and Bradley. Nicole, we were talking about different views, I mean, of how from both charities and social enterprise, a purpose-led organization, combining, supporting one another to make an impact. I mean, we had the time to talk about what each of us was doing, whether actually as an accounting firm, you can actually have a positive impact and dedicate part of your income to supporting different type of organizations, down to measuring social impact and helping charitable organizations articulate their value proposition or the messages towards their supporters, and how the work is being delivered and what is the returns in terms of beneficiary outcome and impact. and on my end, how we can actually enable those organizations tap into unexploited and exploited underutilized funding resource, which are donation tax abates from past years of donations. So it was actually a really interesting conversation how each of us were coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, and devoted our time to make a positive impact in the communities.
Cool, that's great. And why don't you put a link to Fund a Future in the chat so people can find out more about that, because that's a really amazing initiative trying to harness the donation receipts that disappear, right? that don't actually get claimed. So
this is thank you for giving me this opportunity. So there's about $250 million each year that disappeared and roll-offs from the RD as a tax liability back to the Kiwi donors in New Zealand, and it's just such a missed opportunity that can be quite painful to do, but about 60% of Kiwis do not claim the donation tax abates, unfortunately. We're set up to just provide a platform so that they can actually sign up once and never have to worry about that ever again, and keep on generating this outcome and flow of funding towards the original charities people have made donation to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I've been watching progress, and you're doing great in terms of raising your profile and getting people on board. So check it out for sure. Was there anybody else left from another group? I feel like maybe that's all of them, or is... I'll take the silences. That's it. We've gone down the last few here, but just want to close off the call because people will be watching this later. So I want to say thank you so much to everybody who's joined. I hope that it's been interesting from an information perspective, but also maybe a little bit inspirational as well in terms of hearing from people doing some amazing things. And I know sometimes if you're in the industry in terms of a lawyer, accountant, or whatever, you can get too focused on the next email, and actually what you're there to do is support amazing charities, support not-for-profit, support purpose-driven businesses. So I think it's quite refreshing to hear those perspectives that Jezza and Anna provided. And if any of you do know of synergy or connection with something else that would help them, I'm sure that they would welcome the chance to talk. So in terms of next steps, I'm going to hold these every 2 months, and I'm going to try to have diverse speakers come in and give us a little snapshot. It's going to be short and sharp, 4 or 5 minutes each, and then we'll have the breakout sessions. So feel free to join. When I sent the invite out, it was like a recurring meeting for all of this year. So hopefully it's already in your calendars. I'm not going to resend it, but I will send out emails that remind people, like maybe a week or 10 days before, hey, don't forget this is coming up. And I haven't checked recently, but last time I looked, there was more than 250 on the email list. So I know lots of people are actually reading the emails, and I get lots of feedback about the videos from people who couldn't make it, but they're watching it right now on a Sunday afternoon or whatever. So thanks everybody for joining, and let's stay connected and keep supporting each other in ways we can. All the best for a great weekend. Cheers.